As we get closer to November, it appears that Donald Trump is becoming unbeatable. What is up, people of the internet? It is me, Real American, back again with a new video today. We have to talk about the 2024 presidential election because it appears that Donald Trump's becoming unbeatable. And I know that sounds crazy because according to people on Twitter and these quote-unquote experts, Trump is actually down by 15 points. He's going to lose in a landslide. It's all over for him. That's what everyone's claiming. But as of now, it's not the case. And in fact, you could argue as of now, it's a complete disaster, not for Trump, but for Kamala Harris. Now, that doesn't mean I believe Trump's gonna win in a historical landslide, but I just believe, as of now, Trump's in a very good situation, much better than most people give him credit for. People make it sound like he's really down by 15 points, he's gonna lose every single swing state. But in reality, no. In fact, it's much more likely that Harris gets crushed than Trump. And there's a bunch of data points out there, but let's start with early voting. It's been a complete and total disaster for Democrats. Look at this. These are absentee ballots in Georgia, North Carolina, and Pennsylvania. Look at it. It is a disaster for Democrats. North Carolina, it swung 14 points Republican in just 4 years. Pennsylvania, roughly a 2-point shift. And these are votes that should be way more Democrat. These are absentee ballots. These are ballots that back in 2020 and even 2022, Democrats killed Republicans with them. Now, it's not a big surprise that compared to 2020 and even 2022, these votes are more Republican because, let's face it, the Republican Party, they realized, oh, wait a minute, we can use early voting. We don't have to rely just on election day votes. Like, of course, more than likely, the vast majority of Republican votes, they're going to be on election day. That's what's going to happen more than likely. But that doesn't mean we should not use early voting. That Democrats use early voting to their advantage. And it seems like right now, Republicans are doing the same thing. Now, I want to be clear that this does not mean North Carolina is going to shift 14 points Republican or Pennsylvania is going to shift 2 points Republican. But it just means that right now, these early votes, which should be the most Democrat voter bloc, these absentee ballots, especially in Pennsylvania, they should be way more Democrat than they currently are. But right now, they're not. And you can even look at a place like Virginia. Look at this. Early voting as of today, it's only 58% Democrat and 42% Republican. That's it. But the biggest bombshell in early voting in Virginia is the low propensity voter. Now, for those that don't know, low propensity voters are just people that don't vote. They're people that may vote in one election every 20 years, maybe. But a large chunk of people, they just never vote. In recent years, these voters have become way more Republican. These are Trump voters. These are people that they might have voted 30 years ago, but that's about it. They don't vote at all. Well, look at this. Republicans right now are absolutely killing Democrats with low propensity voters. The only reason the Democrats have a lead in early voting is because of high propensity voters. That means people that vote in every single election, they vote every year. It doesn't matter if it's 2021, 2022. It doesn't matter if it's a House race, a special election. They vote no matter what. And right now, Democrats are winning the early vote because of these high propensity voters. That's not good for Democrats because these are voters that will vote no matter what. And the whole point of early voting was to get people that usually don't vote to vote. So there's a chance that these 4 out of 4 voters, which means people that vote in every election, these are people that were going to vote no matter what. And Democrats, they're just cannibalizing their election day support. While Republicans, they're actually getting new people out to vote. This is a big deal because if these were just high propensity voters, you could argue, well, that's just Republicans cannibalizing their election day vote. When in reality, it's not. These are low propensity voters voting. And that effectively means the higher the turnout, the better it is for Republicans, because if you have a bunch of people that don't vote actually vote, these people are going to be much more Republican than those that vote in every single election. That's a fact. It's not 2004 where Republicans were begging for 5% turnout. No, Republicans actually want high turnout. They want as many voters voting as possible because of this metric right here. Low propensity voters lean heavily towards Trump. And this is the big difference between 2022, 2023 to now. Republicans are actually getting their voters that are low propensity out to vote via early voting. The early voting for Democrats right now is so bad. It's not just Virginia. Like I said, it's North Carolina, Pennsylvania, even Georgia. All the states have early voting. It looks like a complete disaster for Harris because the people actually voting, they're low propensity. They're more Trump-leaning. They're not just partisan Democrats. These are people that they never vote. But for the first time, possibly ever, these people are actually voting. And if this trend continues, I just don't see how Trump loses. And before people talk with the polling, I just don't see how you could spin the early voting as somehow good news for Harris. It's not. Because early voting, even in 2024, despite it being a lesser share of the vote because obvious reasons, it's still going to be a decent share of the vote. And Democrats, they never abandon early voting. They still rely on it heavily. Yet right now, they're getting their asses handed to them in Virginia, North Carolina, Georgia, Pennsylvania. See, states with early voting, nearly every single state with early voting is a disaster for Democrats. Will that continue? Maybe not, but if this trend continues where we're seeing like 14-point shifts in every swing state, you're talking about an absolute blowout for Trump. I'm not saying it's going to happen, but I don't see how you recover from a 14-point shift in North Carolina. I don't see how you see a 15-point shift in Virginia and say, that's actually good news for Harris. No, it's not. Now, it could change, and I'm not saying Trump's going to for sure win in a landslide, but if these numbers really translate, which I'm not saying they will, like I said, you're talking about a blowout in terms of modern elections. I'm not saying Trump's going to win 500 electoral votes, but the early voting's looking so bad for Democrats that she could be in deep trouble in nearly every single swing state. She could be getting clobbered in a state like North Carolina, Georgia, Arizona. That's how bad the early voting has looked. Now, people are going to say, but the polling, you have Harris up by 2 nationally. Okay, let's look at the swing state polling. 2024 Arizona. Oh yeah, Trump plus 1.5. This same time period back in 2020, the same polls had it, Biden plus 3. So I think it's fair to say, yeah, Trump's probably the clear favorite in Arizona. Let's go to Georgia. Oh yeah, right now, Trump plus 2. Now, in 2020, this was one of the few states that did overstate Trump's support just a little bit. But there's a catch to that. Back in 2020, what happened was you had a couple pollsters like Trafalgar and Landmark. They had a Trump plus 4, Trump plus 5, and they inflated the average. But if it wasn't for those two, more than likely, you would have seen Biden with a lead in the RCP average by like 3 points. You think I'm kidding? Look at this. Quinnipiac, Biden plus 7. PPP, Biden plus 2. Monmouth, Biden plus 4. The same trash polls are now showing, oh wait, Trump's actually winning in Georgia. And there's some reports floating around that the Harris campaign, they've kind of given up on the state. And even then, like, let's say the polls are off by 1 point in favor of Harris in Georgia. That means she's actually down by 1 point. Well, that's still a defeat. Like, that's probably not going to happen, but let's say it's a 1 point miss. Well, that's still a Trump win. So at this point, you have states like Georgia and Arizona looking very good for Trump. And then you go to a state like North Carolina, which it's roughly a Trump plus 0.6 state. But yet again, you have garbage pollsters like Quinnipiac and Survey USA, Elon University. They have it Harris plus 3, Harris plus 1, Harris plus 3. Do people forget that back in 2020, these same polls were claiming, oh yeah, Biden's up by, a point. He's up by 2. He's up by 3. There's some polls that had it. Yeah, Biden plus 6. Biden plus 4. Even the New York Times, back in 2020, their final poll in North Carolina was Biden plus 3. And the poll in roughly the same time period, you know, late September, early October, it was Biden plus 4. These same polls have Trump winning North Carolina. Now, you could argue it's a swing state, but fine. Let's go to other states like, you know what, Pennsylvania. Look at this. Harris has not led in a single poll outside of the New York Times, Quinnipiac, and UMass. That's it. Literally every other poll has it either tied or a small Trump lead, when even Marist and the Washington Post, hell, even Muhlenberg, they found the race tied. These same polls back in 2020, they were claiming, oh yeah, Biden was up by 4.5 points at this, in roughly the same time frame. In early October, it was Biden plus 6, Biden plus 7. These same polls overstated Democrat support by a lot in Pennsylvania. Yet right now, the polling is finding a tied race. Listen, it's not like with North Carolina where, oh, North Carolina polling, it can be pretty bad, but sometimes it's all right. No, Pennsylvania polling, especially in late September and early October, they always overstate Democrat support. And right now, Harris has a smaller lead that Clinton or even Biden had. Biden was up by 4.5 to 6 points. Clinton was up by like 3 to 5 points in Pennsylvania. Yet these same polls found a 3-point shift in the state. At that point, I really believe Pennsylvania is looking good for Trump. And even the campaigns, they're admitting that Trump's in a very good situation in Pennsylvania, just like they are in Georgia and Arizona. Now, that doesn't mean that the campaigns are going to ignore these states. It just means right now, Pennsylvania, Georgia, and Arizona, they're looking damn good for Trump. That doesn't mean he's for sure going to win these states, but let's just say right now he's up in these 3. And let's say, for argument's sake, Harris is up in Virginia and Michigan. Well, at this point in time, Trump has to win just one more state to win. Harris has to run the table. She has to win Wisconsin, Nevada, and North Carolina. Do you see the problem? With how bad early voting's looking in North Carolina and Pennsylvania, even the polling, it's not that good for Harris at all. Do you really think that Harris is going to win North Carolina? It's possible, but I think Trump's a favorite in North Carolina. I mean, the polling there is not looking that good. It's, you know, it's not terrible for Harris, but it's still a Trump lead. But fine, let's just say she wins North Carolina. In this scenario, she cannot lose anything else. She cannot lose Nevada. She cannot lose Wisconsin, Michigan, or even Virginia. Trump has to win just one more state if he somehow loses North Carolina. If he wins it, well, he's got it. He can afford to lose. He can even afford to lose it. He just has to flip like even Nevada or even Wisconsin. This is becoming a disaster for Democrats because at this point in time, they cannot lose a single swing state. And of course, states like Pennsylvania, Georgia, Arizona, they are swing states. But it seems like both campaigns, even the polling, they're showing Trump with a lead in all 3 of them. And we know for a fact the Harris campaign, they're banking their entire campaign on North Carolina. That's their Hail Mary. So that's 4 states where they have to win each of them. They cannot even afford to lose Nevada, because at that point, Trump would be at 271. This is the problem for Harris. For starters, Trump is just polling way better than he's ever polled. And secondly, early voting is so bad for Democrats, even voter registration trends in Arizona and Nevada, they're just as bad, if not worse, than early voting. There's so many reasons why I believe right now Trump is becoming unbeatable. Because he has so many pathways to the presidency, while Harris, she cannot lose a single state. She has to run the table. She cannot afford to lose even Nevada. And Trump right now, he's in a good situation. And here's the thing with Trump. He's doing this good now, in late September. People just mysteriously forget that Every time he's ran for president in 2016 and 2020, Trump performs the best at the very end. Late October, every time he sees a surge. Now, you could argue, well, that's just a polling, being halfway decent, but I really believe that even the garbage polls, they notice a trend that, oh yeah, Trump at the very end, he closes strong. He finishes strong. So if he's down by only a point in Wisconsin right now, which, by the way, there's a bunch of undecideds left, every time there's like a 3 to 4 point shift everywhere. It seems like that's what happens every time he runs. 2020 is down by 3 to 4 in Wisconsin or whatever. But at the very end, the last second, he sees a 3 to 4 point bump in support. He closes strong. So if he's doing this good now, it just becomes more and more difficult for Harris to win because her Hail Mary is North Carolina. And even then, that's not a guarantee that she can win the presidency with. Like, if she wins North Carolina, she still has to hold on to everything else. Anyways, folks, thank you so much for watching. If you guys did enjoy this video, smash the like button down below, subscribe, share with your friends, hit that little bell, follow the social media accounts in the description down below, and of course, join the channel today. Godspeed to all of you.